Yo, yo, the Black Anglo-Saxon.
Shut up, bitch! You tell Mr. Nice Guy.
We're going to check out a conversation about black fatigue.
No, sir.
What's about this black fatigue?
Well, with all due respect to Angela, number one, I really disagree with this. It is a completely behavior-based issue. And when white people, black people, Hispanic people are saying we have black fatigue because of the behavior of some black people, we've all seen it, we all know what it is. It's everywhere, and you know the issue is way more insidious than people realize. And I talk about how a lot of these things come back to what the Democrat Party has done to the black community purposefully, starting with the Great Society of Lyndon B. Johnson, who he famously said, "I'm going to have these N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years." When Democrats said you don't need fathers in the home.
So I'm going to pause it right there first, just to address some of the content that she talked about in terms of the Great Society and Lyndon Baines Johnson. Crazily enough, she's saying the quiet part out loud. And this is what I have in most cases, the problem when it comes to the discussion around black fatigue. She's talking about Lyndon Baines Johnson, a staunch racist, a man who stood on Howard University's campus and said and told the nation, as he gave affirmative action, that white poverty and black poverty were two different things, mainly because the atrocities committed to black people. Now, she's talking about the Democratic Party and the Great Society. What she fails to leave out is that we didn't partake in the Great Society. And thereafter, Lyndon Baines Johnson, you have Ronald Reagan, you have George Bush, you have Bill Clinton. And the reason I bring those names up specifically is because you got crack cocaine era, you have Bush, who staged a fake sale so that he could push the war on crime. And then you have our favorite first black president who pushed mass incarceration, which we're still dealing with the aftermath and the residuals of now. So when it comes to a conversation about black fatigue, it's just always interesting how people haphazardly leave out the part where you have all of these elites, more specifically in the past, white males, who ironically have created a pathway for a woman like herself to get benefits that she had no reason receiving. Because when you talk about affirmative action, when you talk about the civil rights era, unfortunately, the same white men who white women complain about allowed them to shoehorn themselves into a policy that ultimately you shouldn't have received. Like, imagine being white men and being in a position where you literally conquer the world for your women, give it to them, and then we're here in 2025, and because she doesn't necessarily know what she's talking about, and she's just absolutely sick and tired of, again, black people, without addressing the companies such as Viacom and all of these different industries that propagate and continue to push it forward. Or the news, who we know you know what? Just let her keep talking.
You can be on welfare and have as many babies as you want. And oh, by the way, we're going to destroy public schools and we're going to make sure that behavior standards are seen as racist. So the out of control behavior that we've seen in the classrooms, in society, all over, is part and parcel of what the Democrat Party has done to the black community.
All right, Eugene.
So, the destruction of schools, again, you use black fatigue, but we had nothing to do with that. That's something that, unfortunately, your brothers, your uncles had everything to do with. Unfortunately, we were on the other side of that, Brown versus Board, trying to actually address the very thing that you're talking about you're tired of. Unfortunately, what has happened as a result of the policies that were put in place that created these environments, created a situation where, yes, you have people who act out in very bad behavior. Bad behavior that isn't much different from any other group. You have, quote unquote, white trash, or the disenfranchised whites, the whites that people look down on because they don't necessarily fit the stereotypical aspirational whiteness that everybody likes to be in proximity to. But you're having this conversation and you're talking and you don't really understand that while you're saying that you have black fatigue, you're saying the quiet part out loud in the fact that, again, all of these things, all of these situations have been created. When you say Lyndon Baines Johnson says that black people are going to be eaten out of the Democratic Party's hand for 200 years, why does he say that? Why does he think that? This is a staunch racist. Do you not think at all that maybe him, the Dixiecrats, again, Southern Democrats who weren't necessarily liberal but racist, but also wanted to capture a multiracial demographic. Hence, the relationship between Strom Thurmond, Joe Biden. It's quite interesting just to hear these conversations. Like, you're going to sit here, talk about everything that has happened, but you won't address the elites because, you know what? I know what it is. You want a brand deal. You want to stay in proximity to. Or for you, you just want to be able to go home at night and still eat from the same table as the rest of the family. Because even when it comes to, let's say, feminism, something else that has also destroyed the black community that has come from the Democratic Party as well as conservatives of the past, black women have not gotten anything out of the deal because, again, you all who had no business in civil rights legislation were able to pivot into it because your men allowed you to undercut the very black people who you're tired of. So when Lyndon Baines Johnson, a racist, says white poverty is different from black poverty because black poverty exists because we destroyed these people, and white poverty exists because you have a group of lazy people who does not do anything. Again, staunch racist. That same guy and his compadres say, you know what? It's a great idea. Let's allow our women who we build up, break bread with us, let's allow them to get the DEI benefits. And again, I don't say this because there's any hatred, that's just facts. And you probably should stop talking, not because you're a woman or not because you're white, but because you don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what to say to y'all. Do black people have individuals in our community who are absurd? Yeah, just like every other community. But your community and every other community also has not went through the same things. And we'll get to some of that similarly in the upcoming video, because this Nigerian lady is going to speak who has none of the epigenetic historical legacy attached to her group. Hold on. So now we're going to listen to another young lady talk about what she's tired of and kind of go on to justify it. But okay.
Whole with all of this complaining. We need to move past the past and, you know, become better. You know, as an American, my parents were actually not.
So before we keep going, all this whole let's move past the past conversation is haphazardly ignorant. First off, you know what? I'll move past the past if y'all willing to tell Jewish people that who still get benefits to this day. I'll move past it if y'all say that openly to them, because I don't hear that conversation ever being had. I don't hear people being told to move past their history when they're trying to have all of these specific ethnic holidays in America. You're in America. Why don't you just celebrate American holidays? Move past it. You're here now. You're a second, third generation. Get over it. You're American. You're Americanized. Why are you still holding on to the past? And again, I don't necessarily agree with that line of logic, but at the same time, this is what people say to Black Americans, ADOS, because they don't necessarily want to address or deal with the people who've actually committed the atrocities because they want proximity to those very people. And instead of actually just saying, oh, you know what? You actually do, or should at the very least apologize as a nation for what has taken place. And Black people don't complain. We're speaking to the fact that issues have taken place up to very recently. And they haven't been accounted for because everybody continues to say, well, you all don't deserve it. If it were given, then we wouldn't be here still asking for it. Because it's easy to say, stop complaining or forget the past when, as a Nigerian American, because at first she's going to call herself American, but she's going to go into it. You are here because Negroes created a pathway for you to come. Because before the Immigration Act of 1965, if I may be wrong, but we were on quotas. A lot of y'all wouldn't be here. But let's forget the past. Let's continue.
Nigerian. They came here in the 80s and they grew up here. They had me and my brothers, and we're all successful and not one complaint through our entire childhood. They said, work for what you need, work for what you're gonna get, and you will get it. God placed talent in all of us, black, white, whatever you may, call yourself, but God placed, all of these great things within us. Why should I now say, oh, well, a white person thinks this of me, or there's racism here and there? I don't think about that. I don't wake up every morning and have racism and all of these.
What the fuck, man? So first off, it's not about caring what every specific white person thinks. It's not about actual individual white people. It's about institutional protocol. Institutional protocol being this is how things are done. And this is how things have been done has created, unfortunately, results that produce situations like gentrification or the way that laws have been set up in terms of our criminal structure, that you have a disproportionate group of black people who go to prison, although while they are 13% of the population, because I know some people will argue that you have more white people in prison, which may be true, but for all of the people who don't necessarily study social issues, that can be true. But understand that they are the majority. You got me? And also understand that you came here in the 1980s. In the 1980s, they were waging war on black Americans, all the while telling Nigerians, Africans, Caribbeans, Dominicans who were trying to get proximity to whiteness that black Americans were garbage. You all had your own communities and, for the most part, treated us the same way white people did. And that's not to speak to the fact that you didn't have to go through the legacy stuff. And what do I mean by the legacy stuff? Your family didn't get lynched. You didn't have to be traumatized by a generation of people who were slaughtered in the streets by Mr. J. Edgar Hoover. Again, people who are living. So this idea and this notion of, oh, well, I got here in the 1980s and we never complained and my mama and my family is okay with everything. Ma'am, understand that you are not attached to the legacy of ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery. You don't have that in your family, which is very important. And again, it's not to say that you can't speak on these issues, but you should just be informed when you do. And if you do want to be informed, you have people like Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore, who have done great work when it comes to illustrating and talk about numbers, data, historical facts that all illustrate why it is important for you to understand that you are not attached in that way. You are black, so you have residual or get residuals, but you were never the main target. Which is why I said in my last video, the problem and the issue that people have with Trump, including white people, is that his indifference is so gross, it transcends institutional protocol in the fact that he don't care about nobody. See, it was supposed to just be the Negroes get treated like doo-doo. But that is moving beyond. And that's partially why I kind of like it, because now you understand. This is what America has always been. Trump isn't an anomaly. He's a representation of what it is. And not in a way where he's a staunch racist like his forefathers, but in the fact that he just follows institutional protocol. Now, whether he's aware of it or not, I don't know. And what I mean, again, to be clear, institutional protocol, structural racism has been baked into the legal structures, the economic structures, and the social structures. So you have the de facto and the de jure being impacted, as well as economic incentive based on those social demerits or rewards as to how you relate to ADOS. An example being you all, Nigerians, or let's say Puerto Ricans or Dominicans or any other group. No, you know what? Let's use the Irish because there was a decent relationship with them. But when you read how the Irish became white, the WASP, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, gave them a ultimatum. Either you gonna come on outside and fold yourself into whiteness, and not whiteness in the sense that you are white like us, but you're gonna fold yourself into the institutional protocol. We're not gonna treat you like them, but you gotta treat them like garbage. And with that being said, we'll leave you alone. Follow me? Now, here's the last video. So let's see what you guys say.
$1,000 from another organization. I don't know if she actually got that money, but then this video from the person who originally started putting this on TikTok came out in reference to that.
Yeah.
Now I am a first generation American as well, and I was taught a certain way as well, but what we cannot ignore is the things that have set us back as a community. The reason we are not where we're supposed to be is because we are still only a couple of decades away from what we have been oppressed from and the things that we have gone
Constantly
from.
looking at the past.
My grandma,
Really quick, let Dr. Jones talk.
Okay, and so my grandmother, who just passed away last week, was there for civil rights, was there for everything like that, and I was there to see all of those things as well. It cannot be ignored that these things are still oppressing our community. I understand, and I actually agree. Like, I was instilled hard work, go to school, do what you're supposed to do.
And that's the other thing. Most of the people who are talking about this whole black fatigue situation as if most black families, most ADOS families aren't told to work twice as hard, aren't told to work and be better than your counterpart because that's the only way you can make it. Last time I checked, I got that memo my whole life. And most people have gotten that memo, which is why we were able to be funneled into hustle culture by Mr. Richard Nixon himself. Because, again, the prior lady, she's talking about Lyndon Baines Johnson. Richard Nixon gave us black excellence. So, again, another staunch racist who presumably is giving us something good, all the while plotting on our demise. Good, though. Black excellence, something that we've taken a hold to, but has also worked our demise. But you're not going to talk about the dangerous pathology of black excellence and black hustle culture because it goes against everything that your daddies, your brothers, your uncles, your nephews have built. Because you ultimately win off of both sides. You get the DEI slots and you get to go home to Brad, eat from that pot, and you get to come back out and be fake liberal sometimes when you want to. But this lady is saying, yeah, we know that people can be crazy, like within every community, but we also can't glaze over what is taking place in the country. We also can't glaze over the fact that these corporations, even if you take BET, for example, before it was sold to Viacom, if you look at the programming then and now, it is a complete 180. But we don't have conversations about how Ice Cube said, oh, all of this stuff is made by committee. The CIA and all of these organizations have also participated in targeting black people, along with putting the drugs in the community. And again, none of this stuff is conspiracy at this point. It's all been proven. And after I put the drugs in the community, I'm gonna create draconian laws to imprison y'all at higher rates. And then, check this out. After y'all start going to school and getting education, your boy Biden comes in and says, you know what? We're gonna take this off the grid of a public good in the sense that we're gonna cap and keep everything where it is in terms of pricing and just let it boom. And let it boom because you no longer, he's the one who passed the law that says you can't default or put it in bankruptcy or any of that stuff. And I'm sorry, not default. Anybody can still default on their loans, but you can't file bankruptcy for getting rid of your student loans.
And I did, but I'm not going to sit there and ignore as though the people in my community, not everyone had that opportunity. So at the end of the day,
Now, she talked about everybody not having the same opportunity, which is, I think, very important because a lot of people get caught into their very personal experience, which I think is problematic because we do have anomalies in our community, but our exceptions are not the rule. And Black exceptionalism shouldn't be the answer because it shouldn't be when you make it out, you got to feed a whole community or you got to feed 30, 40, 50 people and you got to pay for this for your family or pay for that for your family. That's an example of a community that has not excelled. That's an example of a community that has collapsed on itself. And again, like I said, y'all can go check out Antonio Moore, Yvette Carnell, Breaking Brown, and Tone Talks because they've had a lot of good work and a lot of good pieces around these very issues when it comes to how people are talking about Black fatigue. And they're talking about it the way that they are because they don't typically understand that we taking steps to get here. And though we do have Black degenerate behaviors in our community, every community does. And the only reason that you see ours plastered and propagated as much as you do is because they weaponized and monetized it in terms of corporate interests. So the one thing that I will say is people should be very aware and conscious of what it is they're doing to get to the bag. Stop just taking money to make a fool of yourself. And for my Nigerian sister, you should probably reach out to the chick over at Shade Room because she is part of y'all community. And unfortunately, she makes her money off of propagating Black trash. So, yeah. Tell me what y'all think.